Hey guys, Colleen here. I'm with John Wescott. We're out in the valley. John is a guitar technician. You've been a guitar tech for how long?
Since 1981. So
Wow,
you can
you've
do
been
the
around
math.
the block.
Twice.
Yeah. Are you from California?
I actually was born in Arizona, but I moved to Los Angeles as an infant. And as a matter of fact, my soon-to-be 101-year-old mother still lives in the house that I grew up in,
Whoa, that's
about 10
amazing.
miles from here.
That is so cool. So, talk to me about your childhood and when you started kind of discovering music.
Well, I'm the youngest of five, and my parents did not listen to music. I think they were actually like anti-music.
Interesting.
They
No
could
music at all.
no, just the church. That was pretty much it. But my older siblings listened to, this would be like in the 60s. My sister Kathy listened to Bob Dylan and the Byrds and Donovan. For some reason, she loved Donovan. She was in love with Donovan. And my sister Karen was very much into the Beatles. My sister Janet listened to a lot of Motown, a lot of Supremes and Temptations. And my brother Gary, who is closest in age to me, he listened to the heavier stuff. He listened to Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and Black Sabbath.
Cool.
And so it was always around.
Great.
And being the young kid, I wanted to kind of, emulate them, look up to them. So when I started to get into music seriously as a teenager, probably the first rabbit hole that I went down was like the 60s. I listened to bands like the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane and Jimi Hendrix and the Who and that was kind of my baseline.
Your musical awakening.
Yes, at the record store, and that was a super important thing for me, and probably for a lot of people my age, is when they discovered a good indie used record store. You can go in there with 10 or 20 bucks and really score.
Yeah.
And that's, for 99 cents, you can take a chance on something just because it's got a cool album cover.
Exactly. We are big fans of the 50-cent bins at record
absolutely.
stores.
Absolutely. It's probably around 19, maybe 20. And a friend who played guitar thought we should go to a pawn shop to buy a guitar. He was going to give me some lessons, and there was a bass hanging in the window, and he said, you should get that bass. So we bought that. I later found out that he needed to borrow the bass for some recordings he was doing. I kind of figured out right away that I just didn't have the discipline to really do it the right way. I just kind of noodled around a little bit and got in some crappy garage bands. At the used record store where they had the little thing, bassist needed, and you pull off the little tab. But that was actually what led me to work with guitars. I was in a garage band with some friends when I was like 21, I think, and one of the guitar players worked at a repair shop in the Santa Monica area, and they needed another person just to sweep the floors and run errands and just do little stupid things that a beginner could do.
Sure. So you kind of worked your way up.
As a kid and a young man, I'd never been around tools before. And once I was around tools and I kind of figured out what they did and what you could do with them, just sort of this kind of mechanical problem-solving piece of my brain just went bing, that I didn't even know it was there. And I realized that I really had an aptitude for that.
That's so interesting.
And people would bring in guitars to be worked on, and I would work on them. And when they went home, my boss got $200, and I got 10 or 20.
Yeah.
So I've always been something of a entrepreneur. So it didn't take me long to figure out there's a better way to do this.
That's so interesting that you didn't necessarily grow up around tools. I had never used a wire cutter or wire strippers until I was trying to pursue working on amps. And, I found out that I was interested in that. At what age did you start your business?
It was after 2 years working for someone else. I was this was back in the early 80s, 1983, and you could live on a couple $100 a week back then, believe it or not. and they had, at the time, there was a newspaper called The Recycler, which, for the people out there who might not know what that is, it's kind of like a print edition of what is today Craigslist.
Okay.
And I put a tiny little ad in the Recycler advertising a common repair. I think it was like refrets or something,
Okay.
for like a ridiculously low price. A ridiculously low price. One person replied to that was to become very important in my life, both personally and professionally. His name was Ross Bolton, and Ross at the time had just graduated from GIT. He would later go on to become an instructor and a really amazing guitarist with a really great career. Um, and but after he graduated from GIT, he opened a little student store on the campus of GIT. To clarify, that's what they call now Musicians Institute. Back then, it was GIT.
Okay.
And he said new students would come in all the time and ask him, they were from out of town or maybe even out of the country, and asked him if he knew any repairmen. And so Ross turned on a lot of the students to me, and also, more importantly, a lot of the instructors that were there. People like Keith Wyatt and Les Weiss and Steve Travato and George Lopez and Beth Marlis, and people that I still work for,
Wow.
40 years later. And they, in turn, started sending me their students as well.
Okay.
So throughout the 80s, a big portion of my clientele were like these metal guys named Izzy or Dizzy or Ricky or Nicky, or with a pink Charvel with one green volume knob on it.
Love it.
Yeah, I put on a lot of Kahlers in the 80s. But that's really what got me started and really got me through the lean years of the beginning.
Totally. And then word of mouth
Yes.
travels fast.
Yes, I'm not good at promoting myself, so it was pretty much just word of mouth, and it slowly grew until the internet happened.
Sure.
Then you don't have to promote yourself.
Right.
People will find out about you through, at the time, message boards or Yelp or social media or whatever, and that's when it really kind of took off.
Do you have favorite types of guitars that you like to work on, or is there like a certain repair that you specialize in, or a little bit of everything?
The instrument that's most likely to make me go ooh is an old Fender bass.
Oh, cool.
Because I'm still, in my heart, I'm a bass player, even though I don't really play anymore. And I had an amazing collection of vintage Fender basses.
Cool.
Oh my God, if I had them back. But everybody's got those stories.
Oh yes, we all have ones that got
but
it.
that's what really gets me excited. But I like vintage instruments. I would rather work on an old Silvertone than a brand new 7-string Ibanez or something like that. I like things that have a history.
Yes.
And
I'm similar.
And I like doing fret work. I just like really let's call it polishing the turd. Something that somebody brings in, they have very low expectations for it, but I see a lot of potential and really can make it shine and into a usable instrument that plays better than they could have imagined.
I love that. Do you build guitars at all?
Yeah, I people might refer to me as a luthier, and I always stop them. I say I'm not a luthier, because to me a luthier is someone who can cut down a tree and make a guitar out of it. And there are people that can do that, and I respect them so much. I can't do that. But I do builds from pre-made parts, and I do some wild things, making a guitar out of parts that have no business being together. It's like, okay, I can make it work. I can try. And
you're creative.
Yeah, and that's where kind of that sort of knowledge of tools and how things work and it's sort of the mechanics of a guitar really come into play. It's something that I like to do occasionally, but my bread and butter is guitars come in and they go out.
Right.
That's I have. I like the immediate gratification of sort of like in by 9, out by 5, and pay me and happy customer, and that's great.
It's fulfilling. I mean, as a repair person myself, I understand that satisfaction and fulfillment from comes to you broken, leaves good as new.
Right, exactly. Sometimes better.
Right.
Often better with guitars.
Are there any repairs that you don't do?
Yes. I'm not going to replace the harness on a 335 because some guy read on the internet that these swell new pots he can buy from Scotland are going to make him famous.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm I have found, my wife taught me this. She said there is great power in being able to say no. And
100%. That is wise.
yeah, and so I'm at the point now where I feel secure in saying no sometimes.
Right. Speaking from experience, I've kind of learned what to say no to. Just, I don't work on a lot of solid state amps. And
Right.
I've tried to take them in before, and I'm like, I should have said no because it's just
Right.
not my forte.
Right.
So I think that there is a lot of power in saying no and saving yourself the headache and the stress.
Absolutely.
Doing something that you not necessarily, don't really want to do.
Right. You want to wake up in the morning excited to go to work.
Exactly.
Not tossing and turning all night, having a nightmare about this thing that's waiting for you on your workbench.
Yes. And I'll segue into asking if you have any horror stories, like repair horror stories or things like that, or customer horror stories.
Oh God, yes. Let's go with the customer horror stories. I had a guy come over to the shop, and usually I greet people. Hi, how are you? Thanks so much for coming. It's great to meet you. Mm-hmm. He looked me in the eye. First thing he said to me was, "How do I know I can trust you?" And so I was like, "Okay."
Yep.
There's a movie that Steve Martin was in years ago called The Jerk. And there's a scene where this psycho is like flipping through the phone book, and he just goes, "I'm gonna kill that guy," and I felt like that was me for that day.
Oh God.
So this guy brought a guitar. This guy we're talking about, he brought a guitar, an acoustic guitar that he made himself, an acoustic guitar made using 2x4s and construction grade inch thick plywood. It weighed about 20 pounds.
Wow.
An acoustic guitar.
Wow, yeah.
But he had a neck that he brought, a Warmoth neck that needed some modifications and wanted it installed. It's like, okay. And I did it, and
scary.
It turned out perfectly, and he sued me in small claims court.
All of the technicians I know have the same...
might be the same guy because he has sued 3 other guys that I know of.
On what grounds?
Physical trauma, emotional distress, fraud,
goodness.
Violation of his civil rights.
This person sounds paranoid.
Yes. I did a Google search on him, and I found that he once sued the state of California, and he was seeking damages of $30 million in gold, not in cash, not money, gold. So sometimes...
Sounds on brand.
Yeah, sometimes,
Gosh. Now you'd probably see that guitar and say,
yeah,
hell no.
Yeah, I do occasionally, very occasionally, get someone who I just think their standards are unreasonable.
Sure.
They want the action low, 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 low. They don't want it to buzz. They don't want it to, or they want something. And I tell them, you know what? I just don't think going to be able to make you happy. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but I feel uncomfortable moving forward with this.
Yeah, and that's so respectable that you are just you have those boundaries. You've always worked from a home shop?
Yes.
That's great.
Yes, absolutely. And I like to be in control of who comes through the door.
Totally.
And I like to, in the early days, kind of set my own hours and that kind of stuff.
Are you appointment only?
Yes. I don't need people to set up an appointment ahead of time, because inevitably they won't keep it.
Right.
Musicians.
Yes.
But I just tell them, whenever you want to come by, just give me a call or send me a text. Just make sure that I'm here and it's cool to come see me. And I always am, but almost always am.
Sure.
But I'm just a one-man operation, so if I run off to the hardware store to buy something or whatever,
which is a common occurrence,
and since it is a residential situation, my family's there. I don't want people just sort of dropping by.
Totally fair. Yeah, I'm the same way. I just like to know when somebody is coming.
Exactly.
Just so I can plan around that. Well, we've talked about some nightmare clients. What are some of your positive client
Well,
experiences?
well, so many of them. I just
Mm,
love my clients.
that's
I love.
great.
I didn't even feel weird to call them clients or my friends.
Right.
I do work for some of the greatest musicians in the world. I think I like Ted Green, who is just
Mm,
a legendary guitar alchemist genius.
yes.
All the way to like sort of rock star guys like Pat Smear, who is the loveliest person you ever wanted to meet in the world, and uh, uh, Brian Baker, Bad Religion, and James Valentine, Maroon 5,
Nice.
to like sort of producer types like Kenny Beats or Joe Barresi or Rob Schnauf, people like that, and sort of
Cool.
everybody in between.
Sure.
The most of my customers are really high level working musicians,
Mm,
um, sidemen who have played like for decades with acts as diverse as like Elton John to Merle Haggard to Weird Al Yankovic and kind of
nice.
everybody in between that. Um, but they don't get any special attention because they're like,
Right.
but they might because they're my buddies.
Of course.
The only time when I go is when you start to feel that they kind of expect it, and they reliably come by at the last minute,
Mm-hmm.
and then
On a Saturday or something.
yeah, then you have to have a talk with them.
Right. Totally.
But if someone has a true emergency, I will bend over backwards to really help them out.
Sure. Have there been any projects like, I mean, this is kind of a hard question, I guess, through the duration of your career where it's been like very memorable, like restorations?
I do get things like that a
Mm,
lot. This belonged to my dad. This belonged to my brothers. Belonged to my best friend who passed away, or
sure.
something like that. And I really, I'm touched that these people, that they entrust me to these things that are very important to them.
Right.
And I know that working on an instrument's not like working on someone's refrigerator or something. There's a very personal
Mm-hmm.
relationship between players, and
Yeah.
some of their instruments, not necessarily all of them. Some of them treat them as tools, which they
Mm-hmm.
are, and as sort of utilitarian devices. But some of them are just in love with their
Oh, yeah.
instruments. The ones that are gratifying are instruments that people have given up for dead, and maybe
Yeah.
they've been in the back of the closet for 5 years, and gee, now since I've met you, maybe I'm gonna show you this thing, and
Mm,
and they have very low expectations, and so you're able to like reunite them with
right.
not only an instrument but maybe a part of their personal history.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the sentimental aspect of what we do is the most rewarding
Uh-huh.
in a way because, like you said, like for me too, people will bring me like their grandfather's amp that
Uh-huh.
had just been sitting in a closet for decades. And it's
Right.
like to put new life into that and make it usable again is probably the best feeling ever.
With the customer there and the guitar in front of us, I'll just sort of give them my observations about what I think I can do to improve it, give them different options for different budgets,
Hmm.
and with a realistic description of the improvements that they can expect from those different options,
Yeah.
and then let them decide, and don't browbeat them into doing something. Well, sometimes I browbeat them, but I try not to too
Case by
much,
case basis.
particularly if it's a really good instrument that I think has a lot of potential,
Sure.
and they just want to just kind of half-ass it.
Right.
I like, come on, this is worth
Yeah.
it. Come on, you'll be so happy. But um, I always keep in mind that it's I'm not doing this. I'm doing it for them.
Sure.
Ultimately, I want to make my customers happy.
And that is truly what it's all about.
Absolutely.
I think also in this day and age, I mean, people are used to dealing with big corporations and all that stuff. And so to deal with like mom and pop businesses like ours, it really means so much to be able to
Oh, absolutely.
have a conversation with the person who is doing the service for you and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, I answer the phone and I say, guitar repair, and they go, well, hi, is this John? And I'm thinking, well, who else was
Right.
It's just me and the dog. That's
Right.
pretty much it.
People are surprised to talk to like the owner of the business, but I mean,
Right.
it's your heart and soul.
Right.
What are some of the most important tools to you?
You know, I have a lot of power tools.
Mm-hmm.
I've got drill presses and milling machines and all of that stuff. But you can just go into a hardware store and buy that.
Sure.
The important tools for me are like the weird little chisel that you made yourself, or that screwdriver that is, you know, it fits just that one screw on those weird Vox guitars that they made for just a couple of years, or the things that
Yes.
you just need occasionally that you can't get at a hardware store, that are
Right.
very sort of bespoke for your profession.
The little specialty.
Yeah, the little wire that you have that's bent a certain way so you can reach inside the guitar, and those things.
Right. And you know, like, exactly what it's meant for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me about your favorite instrument that you own.
Well, that's easy because I only own one.
I love it.
And it's a bass that I made for myself probably 40 years ago.
Wow.
And it's had different permutations since then. But it's the closest thing that I ever did to like actually making something from scratch. I made the body from scratch, and I didn't make the neck, but I did a lot of work on it. Mm-hmm. It's had a million different pickups in it, and my girlfriend at the time rattle canned it and painted like the little Pink Floyd blip from Dark Side of the Moon,
cool.
the heart blip.
Cool.
So I made the body, and it's like a precision bass. That was a template that I used, but I don't like the cutaways. I kind of like the slab body of, let's say, like a Music Man.
Sure.
And the neck, I shaped it to kind of be a smaller version of a 59p bass that I used to have. Same sort of general contour to it. And I think it's got Kinman pickups in it now, and I've got little series parallel switch on it.
Cool.
And I was a big Pink Floyd fan at the time. Yeah, we called it the Space Bass.
Space Bass.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
And you said you started building this like when you early on.
Yeah. This was probably 82, 83.
Nice.
I'm guessing. But it's had when I first made it, it didn't have a pick guard. It just had a single precision pickup in it, and it had a noise reduction active circuit that Jim Demeter had designed. I added the jazz bass pickup, and so this is all routed out underneath here.
Okay, cool.
And I put this little ramp thing on it to help my really shitty right hand technique. Did not help. But haven't removed it yet.
I love that it has had many iterations.
Oh yeah,
evolutions.
Yeah. It's sort of an artifact of my time.
What advice do you have for somebody who is interested in pursuing a career as a guitar technician?
I guess I just have to go back to what I said earlier, just to make your customers happy. Mm-hmm. Communication is so important. Yes. I have two customers of mine who are both bass players. Mm-hmm. They're both exceptional bass players. And I could set up both of their instruments where they go, this is amazing, this is exactly how I like it. And then if they switched instruments, both of them would go, I can't play this.
Wow.
I can't play this.
Yeah, so knowing the playing styles of the people who bring you work is huge.
Not necessarily the styles, but their preference.
Sure, yeah.
You know, Hank, I've got all these demos that I recorded years ago that I would love to upload. So I decided, why not try out DistroKid? As we know, DistroKid is a service that helps musicians upload their music to all major streaming platforms. Users of my channel get 30% off at the link I will post below. Go check it out. Get those dusty old demos or your fresh, sparkly new tracks. Whatever it may be, get it uploaded.
Read an excellent book that it's got kind of a clunky name. It's called Shop Class as Soul Craft. And it's this guy, like this Wall Street guy who like ditched his entire life to become a motorcycle mechanic. But he talks about how working with your hands and working in a craft really colors your approach to problem solving and the interaction that you have with the physical world. Mm-hmm. And there was really a lot to it. It really resonated with me.
It's important, especially now that there's no like wood shop classes in school or
Yes.
whatever, which is so sad, but it's like it makes it more important for people to take the initiative to learn new skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very empowering to
Mm-hmm.
feel that you
Yeah.
can do things.
Totally. If anybody out there wants to bring you a guitar, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can find me on Instagram at Wescott Guitar.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me.
Your website.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I had that. I haven't
I
looked at
send
it.
people that a lot. I love.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it. No, that's sad enough.
It was really awesome getting to know more about you. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.